Hey, it's time for another episode of the Digital Marketing Therapy Podcast. Today, as we continue to work through January and our systems and operations, I'm so excited to have my dear friend, Roxanne Fry, here to talk about creating a knowledge base. And this, in big picture, is kind of where everything lives for your organization. So we're going to share what it is, go a little bit more in depth into what goes into it, why it's important, and how it can help you streamline your day-to-day processes, but also manage when you're onboarding new employees, if somebody's taking a long vacation, if you have unexpected turnover. You don't have to worry about what are the steps, what are we supposed to be doing, who's supposed to be doing what, right? Everything is all in one place, and that is the power of a knowledge base. So if you have one that you haven't touched in a while, this is a great episode for you. If you don't have one and you have no idea where to get started, this is a great episode for you as well. Roxanne Fry is the founder and CEO of Rockstar Solutions, LLC. And as a process improvement solutionist, she helps nonprofits leverage technology tools to streamline their day-to-day business operations and maximize the use of their CRM. Roxanne is a certified Salesforce administrator with extensive nonprofit C-suite experience. I work with Roxanne almost every day, and I'm so excited to finally have gotten her to say yes to be on the podcast. It was a great conversation. So I really hope that you'll take a listen. I know that systems and operations aren't always the most fun when it comes to our organizations, but they're critical in allowing us to continue to do the work that we do, increase our impact, and continue moving forward to serve the communities that we serve. So give it a listen. Let me know what you think. Before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by our January freebie. This year, we're giving away a new tool every single month. And this one is all about technology. When it comes to understanding the tech that you need to support your organization, we've created a tech checklist to help you evaluate new tools that you're going to bring in to your organization, and also to be able to track the tools that you're currently using and how much it costs and how and when they renew, right? So they can help you understand big picture, what tools you have that are supporting your organization, what things need to integrate with each other, and make better decisions quicker and make the research less frustrating when it comes to bringing in new software or technology into your organization. You can download the tech checklist at our website at thefirstclick.net/resources or in any of the show notes from the January episodes. I hope that you enjoy it and download it and get to work figuring out what tech is going to be the best to solve the problem that you need solving. Let's get into the episode. You're listening to the Digital Marketing Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Bedell-Mulhern. Each month, we dive deep into a digital marketing or fundraising strategy that you can implement in your organization. Each week, you'll hear from guest experts, nonprofits, and myself on best practices, tips, and resources to help you raise more money online and reach your organizational goals. Hello, everyone. Join me in welcoming Roxanne Fry to the podcast. Roxanne, thank you for being here.
I am so thrilled to be here. One of my favorite topics.
Yay! I have known you for a long time, and I'm so excited to finally have you on the podcast. It's been a bit. So, and excited to have you here to talk about systems and operations and all of the things that we don't want to think about, but things that are super critical to our long-term success for organizations. So why systems? Why operations? Why is this something that you've loved kind of geeking out on and building a business around?
Well, there's so many things going on within a nonprofit. We want to serve our customers. We want to serve our donors. And so many times we get bogged down by what I would call back office tasks and projects. If we can do those better, and by better, I mean both more efficiently and more effectively, then we have more time and more resources to serve the people that we're here to serve. So that's why I love to dive into operations and streamlining and databases, because there's so many opportunities, especially if you have someone help you step back and take a big picture view of what's happening and really questioning, why are you doing that? Why are you doing it that way? Tell me more about that. How long have you done it that way? So that's what I love to dig into.
I love that you said, sometimes it takes a third party to kind of help you do that. Because I know we've both worked on and off with VAs or had other people come into our business. And there's so many things that we just do that we don't even realize that there is a process. It's just our own process, that when it comes to communicating that, or if we take a vacation or whatnot, it's not intuitive to everyone else.
Exactly. I mean, it could be anything from, I have a nonprofit I work with who I adore. They inherited an accounting process from a previous person who had been there for many years and done great things. But I was the one who stopped to say, why do you print this whole thing out on pink paper? And why do you print out the bank statement that's already there in front of you electronically? So how can we, step back and say, is there a reason for pink paper? We love pink paper. If there is, great. If there's not, why are we buying pink paper? Or if there's a way to, why are we printing something that's already electronic, right? Let's do the editing, let's do the markings, let's do everything in a PDF editor, rather than creating more papers that someone needs to file and then someone needs to destroy in part 7 years, according to the document retention policy. So I love digging in to say why. I feel like a toddler sometimes. I'm the person who comes in and just asks, why? Tell me more.
Yep. We need that though. Okay, so today we're talking about knowledge bases specifically. So it doesn't matter where you're housing your data. It doesn't matter where your CRM is. Like, this is not like a tech tool specific podcast, which is why I'm so excited about this topic. But could you kind of share what a knowledge base is and how it can kind of help organize all of this stuff that you've just been mentioning?
Yes. A knowledge base is really a one-stop shop for information, resources, and tools that every employee can go to. You can even have a knowledge base for your board members so that they don't need to keep track of all of the different documents we share, that they can be in a secure location, that they can access at any time, that's searchable. And the whole goal really is that the team, your staff team, stops writing things on sticky notes, like not necessarily passwords, but processes. A lot of people keep notebooks beside them. And if you have 5, 10, 15 staff members or more, think about how much information is spread across these notepads and sticky notes all over the place. So if you can get all that information into one place that's searchable, that everyone has access to according to what they should have within the organization, you can streamline onboarding, you can streamline stewarding your donors. All of the things that some people keep up here can be into a platform so that things can just run smoother and without as much effort.
Yeah. And this goes beyond, like, you might have an employee handbook, which is something that would go into your knowledge base, but this goes into literally, like what you said, how do we, what's our donor stewardship process like? I think one of the examples you shared with me a long time ago was like even just the process of what happens when a donation comes in, like who takes the check, who deposits it, like all of those things. Like it's every single thing that you do in your organization, right?
Yes, absolutely. So just to touch on this really quickly, when I say knowledge base, I'm thinking electronic, right? So you could have a big binder. You don't want that because everyone has to go to wherever the big binder is, and it takes a lot to update. So knowledge base should be electronic, like I said, searchable. So some platforms could be Google Site, SITE. Those are free if you're a nonprofit that has the Google Suite available to you. You could also use Notion, which is actually pretty easy to use as well, very versatile. So when information goes in there, yes, it makes it easier. I love to start and say, when I'm talking to a nonprofit, okay, tell me what happens when a check comes in the door. And usually they'll list off for about 4 steps. But then when I dig deeper and I say, well, hold it, between here and here, something has to have happened. And then we hear, oh, there's this that happens and this person touches that and here's what happens. So there's 2 things that I identify there. First of all is, can any of those steps be eliminated or streamlined? And the second is, let's make that a succinct description, steps, bullet points. If this, then that, here's what we do. And that is literally walking through, do you scan the check? Where is it saved? How does the person enter it into their database? Can they just pull open the PDF and then mark done on the PDF? What happens if it's a credit card? What happens if it's a reoccurring gift? Because a lot of our team members know this or they've developed a process. But if they were to, the old hit by the bus theory, if unfortunately they got sick or they had to leave for a family emergency and no one knows the process, that team member is either going to have a really long backlog of projects during a time that you're not communicating with your normal processes to your donors and your clients, or someone picks it up, does it, and it has to be corrected because 10 steps were missed. We all have the greatest heart for the nonprofits that we serve. So, if you can take the time, and I highly encourage nonprofits to take the time. We say we don't have the time to do this, but we have to do it, is to just stop, take a breath. And by that, I mean, let's start talking through all of these steps. They often do tie to CRMs or to other processes that you're doing. But let's get them documented for the future and for now.
Yeah. Well, and so if we're got to this point in the episode and we are like, okay, yeah, we don't have that in place. But the thought of doing everything all at once feels kind of overwhelming, right? There's lots of different things that happen in our organization. So is there an area where you recommend maybe we start, or like, does this have to be done all in one shot? Can we do it over a period of time? Like, how can we make this something that is manageable and kind of supports our organization without all the overwhelm?
Right. It would be a lot to just try to document everything within a couple of weeks. That's just not feasible, and you probably don't have the mindset to do that. I would first look to see if you have any positions that are transitioning, meaning, are you about to hire a new person? Are you creating a new position? Is someone getting ready to retire, or they're going on a 3-week vacation? Whatever that looks like, look at that and see, is this a critical part of what we do? More than likely it is if you have a staff member covering it. Then take the time to ask that person to write down. I mean, it's worth the investment. Have them write down what they're doing. The next check to make sure that what's being documented is helpful to a person who doesn't know anything is to literally have another person who doesn't know anything sit down with the person who wrote the instructions and just let them follow the instructions. And if they get to a part where they're like, I don't know how to get from here to here, we realize we're missing instructions. So have the person who has all that knowledge dig deeper and put in more steps. That's a process that sometimes can take multiple refinements. If you can get the majority captured, then just keep refining. Maybe once every 2 weeks, have a complete stranger within your organization walk through the process. So that's one piece I would look at. If you don't have any staff transitions at all anticipated or that recently happened, then I would look at what are the most critical pieces of your organization that maybe there's a lot of steps and only one person knows. Because we talk about cross-training, but I mean, we're humans. We can't retain everything about someone else's job while we're also doing our own job, right? Like that just doesn't happen. So I would look at the jobs that only one person really knows how to do this and no one else really has any insight that would help carry them through a day of doing that. And then start there. So you also might want to look at donor stewardship and depositing checks and all of that type of thing. But those are the two biggest scenarios I would look at: changing staff and a situation where only one person knows it.
Oh, that's such good stuff. And I think too, one other thing that I'll add to that is a tip that was told to me was to video record yourself doing the task, even something like how I go through my email and what I work on right away versus what gets sent, whatever. Even just screen recording yourself doing something, right, can pull out the things that you do inherently that you don't think about that you do as part of your process.
Yes. So if you're screen recording with a transcription service, that's the best because you literally talk through what you're doing. The other thing is I'm thinking about recording, you're clicking here, you're clicking there. I would be cautious about putting things into a knowledge base that are easily learnable or Googleable, if that's a word, easily able to find via Google. Because
it's a word now.
And I say this mostly with Microsoft products as an example. Word, if you don't know how to do mail merge, that doesn't need to go into the knowledge base. That's a skill that anybody can learn by watching a few videos, but I would not necessarily go through the process of click mail merge, click letters, click this. You could put best practices as to click edit individual documents, check and make sure, but really kind of look at putting into the knowledge base what is unique perhaps to your organization, how you do things. Everyone uses the mail merge functionality the same, right? There's nothing really unique about that process in itself. Here's how to run labels. So just kind of try to make that distinction as well.
Okay, so we've talked through how to kind of what a knowledge base is, what types of things need to be in there, to kind of where to start with it. But one of the things that I know all of my ops people will care about is the number of people that have their hands in editing this and putting the actual finished product into the knowledge base. So do you want to have like a main point person who's responsible, not for creating all of the content, but for managing how it goes in and the editing so that things don't get muddied? Or is this just like a true group effort and everybody just kind of has free reign to make changes?
No, it is not a free-for-all. Definitely designated one person is the owner and another person is the backup. If you have everyone editing, you just quickly lose control over even how things are phrased. So, for example, don't put in your knowledge base. Then Sammy does this, and then Roxanne does this, and then it goes back to Sammy. Instead, use positions or roles. So you might say the gift processor does this, shares it with the accountant or the bookkeeper. Otherwise, you will quickly have an out-of-date knowledge base, because even if people don't leave, they might change positions, and then it's become chaos within your knowledge base. So you definitely do want to focus on roles and positions versus people, and then having one person in charge and someone as backup. I would also have staff members. You could collect this in a Google Doc if you want. Everyone add their own procedures to a Google Doc, and then the person in charge can, paste it into Notion or Google Site, whatever that looks like. And again, I always recommend bullet points, not paragraphs. Unfortunately, we have a limited attention span these days. So anything that you can put in bullets and headings, we all know that that's easier to read.
Yeah, no, that's a super good tip. And I love that. And I knew that's what your answer was going to be because I think I agree. Like, we all have our own we all own our own work, but it needs to be consistent for the sake of the organization inside that knowledge base. So once we kind of start to put things in here, because you did mention, maybe roles change or you might add new positions and whatnot. How often should we be hopping into our existing knowledge base to kind of review it and edit it and kind of clean up some of our systems?
I would say anytime you have a major staff transition, such as an operations person, or maybe the person who's handling all of your gift entry into your database, your gift receipting, that's always a good time to review. Other than that, I would probably break it into sections. Let's say you break it into department, maybe development, operations, client services, other things, and review one of those quarterly, because that means each one's being reviewed once a year. Kind of like when you say you clean zones in your house to not get overwhelmed with doing it all at one time. So that would be the best practice, is to, keep in touch with that. And then anytime there's a transition, that would be the best time to have someone who doesn't do it normally sit down with the person who does and make sure that all of the directions are, up to date. Other things that change too, might be that your board requests a different type of report that you can save in your database, but maybe they want to present it in a certain way, or the reason that they want it. That's the other thing that's helpful in a knowledge base, is not just here's what we do, but here's why we do it. Mm-hmm. So that if someone new comes in, they might say, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Why are we doing it that way? An explanation might include because of the state law, or because of the issue that's arisen before, or something like that. Then at least and then you can address, did the law change? Did the circumstance change? But if you don't know why someone's doing something, your documentation really lacks an entire dimension to it.
Yeah, it's like when we talk about the data that you collect for your organization, it tells a story. So if you're not collecting the data to tell the story you need, you're not going to be able to make decisions based off of that. So would you also then, on the tech and software side of things, for example, add in, this is, we chose this tool because, it integrates with this, the cost, XYZ? Like, would you make sure to put all of those qualifiers, that kind of stuff in there too?
I would put bullet points in there because let's say someone new comes in and they're like, that's the craziest database I've ever seen. And then they go to pick something else, right? But if you put in the just bullet points of, it does this, it does this, it does this in priority, because not every software platform is a silver bullet for what you need. So you have to prioritize what's really important. Because this new database might do X, Y, and Z, but those aren't nearly as important as A, B, and C are to that specific organization. So I think it's a really good point of things that can go in the database. Another thing I was going to raise, I know some organizations have SOPs, standard operating procedures, documented in Word docs or even in Google Docs. So the challenge that I've seen with those is you might have 47 different SOPs. And while you can link from one Google Doc to another, it's not as easy in Word. You can link, but you're not able to see how things interact as a whole, right? So when you see things in a Google site and it looks kind of like a website, right? It's an old intranet for those who know that word. And it just becomes easier because people are much more used to viewing things that way and go, oh, here's my department, here's this, especially if things cross over by department and functionality within the organization. So if you have, 15, 20, 47 SOPs, it's awesome that you're documenting all of this, but to see it more concisely and as a big picture, you really might want to consider getting it into a Google site or Notion or whatever the case may be.
No, I love that too, because if you have too many Google Docs, you get lost in where you were and how to get, you don't have like that nice table of contents that you can kind of just go back and forth and still see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it just seems to make editing easier, right? If you have everything in one place versus in, so many different Google Docs or Word docs. And granted, you could put everything into a Google Doc, but you're scrolling an awful lot to get to where you need versus being able to click a navigation bar that you create based on the information that you have in your knowledge base.
Well, so let's talk about usability and user experience and kind of team culture around a knowledge base, because it's great to put it all together, but if nobody's utilizing it, then it's wasted effort, right? So for people that are listening to this and they're just like, well, we tried doing that, nobody used it. Like, how can we encourage our teams to always continue to reference this? How can we make it easy for people to find it? Like, how can we kind of create that team culture around this knowledge base is where everything is, and you should care about it as much as everyone else, because it just helps everybody do their job better because they kind of know how what they're doing is impacting other departments or other staff members.
That's a great question. I think that it can either be the person who manages it or someone else on the team who's kind of the rah-rah cheerleader person to get people on board with using this, is that whenever they're asked a question, say, here, I'm happy to help. Here it is in our knowledge base. Just give them the link, right? And then they can go there. They might at the same time go, oh, I went to that link and this is outdated. Like, great, let's update it. So it's a wonderful way to keep that in front of people. It's also extremely helpful during staff onboarding, could be for board onboarding as well. Versus, everybody learns different. Some people will learn better face-to-face. Some people will like watching a video. Some people will like reading. But it's a great resource to point your new hires to. Like, here is our, employee manual. Here's the board roster, a link to Dropbox, perhaps. And someone might say, well, why do I need to put a link to Dropbox? Can I just go to Dropbox? And the point, again, is that you don't have to search 3 different places. I don't have to figure out where it is in Dropbox. I can just go to my knowledge base and go, oh, here's the current roster for the board. Here's their bios, whatever I may need. It helps your grant writers, everybody. But if you can start to encourage people to say, yep, here it is. Here's the password for the guest Wi-Fi. I mean, it takes some discipline because it would be so easy to just say, here's the password. But if you start pointing out what's actually in the knowledge base, that people can find it really helpful. EIN, oh my gosh, how many times do you look for the EIN, right? So you can have a sticky on your computer with the EIN, then you're risking typing it in every time and potentially making a mistake. Or it can be on your homepage, on your knowledge base, that is maybe that's your homepage for your browser, and you just click there, double click the EIN, and paste it wherever you need to do. Again, eliminating the possibility of human error, and making sure it's in a place where everyone can reference it if they need it. So.
Well, and what I love about that is if you're pushing everybody to the knowledge base and you have a team environment where it is being edited and taken care of, then you also know that your team is working off of the most current and accurate information, right? It's not a PDF that somebody downloaded onto their desktop that has been changed 5 times. So because that's where they always go, they're using and sending out older information.
Exactly. I think it can be really overwhelming sometimes to say, okay, I'm going to build a knowledge base and I have to review it quarterly and I have to keep everything perfectly up to date. I think we all just have to realize that it is an evolving tool. It will live and grow within your organization. But if it's considered the most up to date, that gets rid of, I sent in the old PDF that talks about our services and we don't offer the program that's on that PDF anymore. Right. So this ties into so many different things, like consistently naming your document so that when you link to it, current board roster, whatever that looks like, you're pointing to the most up-to-date version and everyone knows exactly where to look at for that.
Yeah. And so I think it takes us as employees of our organizations to start to just maybe challenge your staff. Document 2 things that you did this week and then just kind of build it from there, right? Like it can be a slow roll, but can make a big difference.
Right. You could even make it a part of your standing agenda for your team meeting that everyone is in charge of documenting, like you said, two processes a week or even one. And then they come to the staff meeting and they report on which processes they documented and submitted to the knowledge base manager. I'm going to call that person the manager. And then there's becomes accountability with that. And accounting, like an accounting department, they often have a lot of checklists. Here's what we do every month. Right? Mm-hmm. That can be in the knowledge base easily. If you needed to, you could print the checklist and check them off if you want, or you could, screen capture, change it to PDF and check them off every month, whatever that looks like. You could have one rolling PDF of all the checklists for the whole year, showing that you did them in one PDF. So accounting is a great place to start because they live in checklists, whereas development directors, that department is more kind of going with the flow. They don't have a standard checklist for a lot of things because each donor is different and history is different, things like that. But there are still processes in development that can and should be captured in a knowledge base, especially regarding stewardship. Here's why we do this. Here's what we do, and here's why we do this.
Okay, so one of the last things that I want to touch on here, because I think hopefully this will convince you that you need to put this into practice, is because you brought up team meetings and let's work on one process at a time or what have you. I'm sure you've had this experience with your clients where it's like, hey, everybody work on a process. You come together and you talk about it, and they're like, wait, you're doing that? I was doing that, or I'm doing it this way, but you're doing it that way. So is it like, as you're kind of putting this together, it can be a really big time saver for you in the long run, right? Because not only are you protecting yourself with staff turnover or illness or vacations, you can also kind of streamline maybe some of your systems that you didn't realize were being done in so many different ways or by more people than they need to.
Right. Not only that point, but along the same line is if you're documenting everything that this person does, and then your organization grows to the point where they need help in that department, so they hire another coordinator, right? It's easy to say, okay, here's what this person's doing. Let's take these portions out and move them to this other person's job description. It just makes so much sense to be able to do that rather than guessing and going, well, is this too much? Is this too little? What is it? No one even knows what that person does, right? If you have the processes documented, you can see exactly what they're doing for sure. And then also, like you mentioned, duplication of effort and also how things tag team together. So person A may say, well, here's what I do and here's where I end. And the next person's like, oh, well, hold it. If you would have done this part a little different, my job starting here would have been so much easier. Can we make that adjustment? And there's small tweaks that can make the workflow as a whole, each piece of it, go together much more smoothly. So the whole goal of having a knowledge base is to help your team ease frustration so they're not constantly searching for something or wondering why something comes to them the way it does. Well, that's part of the process. Should we change the process? And also just, you're creating more time, you're saving time to spend that time with the people that you want to serve, your donors and your clients.
That's so good. Well, I'm a huge fan of a knowledge base. It's something that I'm currently working on in my business. And I know that we work on some clients together, and the ones that have these things set up, it's so much easier to kind of function and work, especially as you're bringing in consultants for certain things or hiring staff. I think it's such a critical thing. So I hope that this has inspired you to start working on it. Or if you have one that's kind of collecting dust somewhere on a shelf, that you can go back and take a look at it and review it. Roxanne, as people are kind of starting to build these out, is there any kind of last words of wisdom, or you don't know what you don't know, that we might want to think about as we kind of start down this process?
My number one recommendation is to start. Like, if you put it off until the circumstances are right, or you have someone dedicated to do it, or you have 2 weeks of free time in the summer, that won't happen. I do have a knowledge base for myself, which is really, really helpful. I have different versions of my bio that I want for different things. I have all kinds of different things that are captured in my own personal knowledge base for my business. So just pick an area. Like I said, look at those couple of examples of staff transitioning, the person who knows the position that only one person knows. Get started, at least start. You can always add into it. What do they say? You're never going to reach perfection, really shoot for good or great. And then you can improve down the line, but get started. Yeah. That's my number one recommendation.
Yeah. And I think you could probably Google knowledge base examples, and some other people's will show up if you want some examples, right?
You can. There's a lot of articles out there about what to include in a knowledge base, so that might expand a little bit on just what I've been able to share in this short time. But keeping in mind, what are the goals? You want to streamline, make things more accessible, make it easy on your staff, and serve your clients and donors more. So if you focus on that, you'll start to find processes. It's amazing how many processes you'll find once you start digging in.
Well, Roxanne, if people want to connect with you, get to know you more, the services that you offer, how do people do that?
My website address is rockstarsolutions.com. And I know Sammy can share that when she shares this online. LinkedIn, you can find me just at Roxanne Fry. And my email, everything is there. So I'd love to hear from you if you have questions about how this would look, could this mean for your organization, where to start. I'm happy to help.
Yep. And we'll have all of that linked up in the show notes at thefirstclick.net/242 to make it easy for you to connect with Roxanne. I highly recommend that you do, because she's amazing. Roxanne, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Sammy. This was so much fun. I geek out on this topic, and I love helping nonprofits in this area. Thank you.
Big shout out and thank you again to Roxanne for joining me on this episode. I love the action steps that she gave you, and the way that she made it super easy for you to know, where do you start? What projects do you start on? Who do you start this project with? Who's in charge? All of the things. It makes it easy to just kind of get going. And like she said near the end, just get started. It can be an overwhelming project, but baby steps, a little bit at a time, and you'll be well on your way to getting all of your processes set up and ready to go. So again, the tools that she mentioned, some other resources, you can go to thefirstclick.net/242 to check all of those out. For now, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me and letting us come into your world for these trainings. You can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube so you don't miss out on a single episode. And we do have bonus episodes that are continuing to come out throughout 2024. So I hope you'll check them out for my friends who have podcasts as well, with additional resources that can support you and your organization. So subscribe and leave us a review while you're there, if it makes sense, so that we can really get out there in front of more and more nonprofits that could really use some help with their marketing and their systems in order to increase their impact. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.